Okay, I will. Hopefully, let's try not to talk too loud. How you doing, everyone? My name is Matthew Doyle. Hopefully you guys are awake and having a good show and learn a lot about UDK today. So I have come here to tell you guys about the most exciting aspect of UDK development, and that is UI design. Of course, yeah. So obviously, it's not the most exciting aspect of game development, but it is a critical one. You know, obviously, every game needs UI. We need menus, we need heads-up displays, especially shooters and things that Unreal are really good at. So today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit. I'm going to spend some time, I believe I have an hour, I'm going to spend some time explaining Scaleform, which starting in, I believe it was March of 2010, became integrated into UDK, as most of you probably are well aware. Going to talk to you about what Scaleform is in general, what it has to offer, why it's so great for UI development, why, pretty much every studio that's a studio is using Scaleform nowadays to do their UI development. Again, UI development is not sexy, but it is important. You don't want to waste a lot of time doing it, though. You want to be quick with it. You want to get it done so you can get to the fun stuff. And, that's what Scaleform is great for. It's fast UI development. It's fast to prototype your menus and so forth, and real easy to skin them, and a very powerful tool set. So let's get on with the show. Again, my name is Matthew Doyle. I'm a technical marketing specialist at Autodesk. I'm an ex-game developer. I've worked as an indie developer, ran my own company for a few years. I've also been a AAA developer. I've used the Unreal Engine a lot as a professional on console titles, as well as an MMO. So what is Scaleform? Scaleform is, in a nutshell, as you can see there, the leading Flash-based UI development tool in the video game industry. We're used by pretty much all of the top 20 publishers out there. I think the last one we signed was Nintendo America. They were the last holdout of the top 20. And we recently signed them in the past few months. Scaleform provides a hardware-accelerated Flash player, essentially. If you're familiar with Flash, it's a 2D software player, mostly used for web applications in the past. So Scaleform basically built our own Flash player that's hardware-accelerated. And what we do is we take that 2D UI content and we tessellate it onto triangles, essentially, and turn it into 3D content. We're really good at, we have a really spiffy algorithm for doing vector shapes really fast, large amounts of vector shapes. And then we, anti-alias those vector shapes up to 256 times, I believe. But we also allow for bitmap images. And then, we tessellate that stuff onto triangles, put it into 3D space, which allows the GPU to render it with hardware acceleration. That's Scaleform in a nutshell. Bear with me too today. I've been drinking a lot of coffee, a lot of that Guru energy drink. I've been up since 6 a.m., so if I'm a little fast, just bear with me. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Scaleform's key features. This isn't all of Scaleform's features. Scaleform does offer quite a bit, but these are probably some of the more important ones. First of all, Scaleform provides for anti-aliased vector graphics, as I said, as well as bitmap images, which allow you to create fully fledged UIs, menus with buttons, sliders, scroll bars, whatever you can imagine, everything you would need for a menu, as well as HUDs. And we also provide a high-quality dynamic font system. Basically, we take fonts and we render them to a bitmap, which you can then, which Scaleform then uses as an atlas to, render your text fields. But if fonts approach a threshold of size, they get to a certain size, then we actually render those fonts as vector images. So you can see the image there on the right, where that is broken up into triangles. Excuse me. And so this, by rendering it onto vector images, or vector shapes instead of bitmap images, reduces your total footprint of memory. And that's all done dynamically. We also provide rich text support. So basically anything you can type into an HTML text field, you can do in Scaleform text fields. So you've got multicolored fonts, different fonts in the same text field, image embedding. You can put smiley faces, icons, any image you want to put there can all be done in a Scaleform text field. We also provide masks for arbitrary shape clipping and shape animation. This tends to be important for things like health bars that aren't your typical rectangle, if you want something that's shaped like a heart or something weird that you want to deplete visually in a different way than just your typical bar down, that's what masks are really good for, as well as mini maps. And then we also provide supports for blend modes. If you're an artist or a graphics engineer, you know what that is. Add, multiply, screen, and so forth, as well as filter effects like glow, blur, drop shadow. And all of these can be applied to text fields as well as to images. Now, Flash is essentially a 2D tool. However, with Flash 10 and also with Scaleform, we provide extensions that provide for, sorry about that. We have extensions that provide for 3D rotation and translation of your images. And if you've seen Crysis 2 or Dead Space or Deus Ex Human Revolution, you've seen good examples of 3D UI. And Scaleform was actually used for Deus Ex Human Revolution and Crysis 2. Now, when you're developing UIs, a lot of times developers face problems with multiple aspect ratios or UI elements that need to be resized. This is usually something that comes into play on a PC more than anything. But regardless, Scaleform provides access to a Flash extension called Scale 9 Grid, which allows you to scale images without stretching. So what Scale 9 Grid does is it breaks the image up into 9 different squares, 4 corners, top, bottom, left, right, and the center. And then that image can be stretched properly to where the center doesn't, go out of aspect ratio and the corners are still crisp. And so basically just the sides are stretching. And Scaleform 4, which isn't in UDK yet, but it is being integrated as we speak. We just need a little more time. But Scaleform 4 is going to provide a fully multi-threaded backend. And obviously Unreal is a multi-threaded engine, so that means Scaleform 4 will fit much better into that engine. And there's going to be a big performance boost because of that. This is a quick peek at the Scaleform Core. Basically, the core is everything in the center there, the light gray area. Bear in mind, guys, I'm not an engineer. I'm an artist. I'm a designer. My engineering skills are pretty minuscule. I can do Unreal scripting. If you've been on the UDK forums, you're probably familiar with me. But so I'm going to try to explain this in a way that non-engineers can understand because I'm a non-engineer. So basically, the Scaleform Core provides a Flash runtime and loader. And the runtime basically handles timeline-based animation. So Flash is, if you're familiar with it at all, it's a timeline animation tool with keyframing and so forth. And so our runtime handles that timeline-based animation as well as animation done by the programmer through C++ or whatever. And our loader loads the SWIF as well as images, and it supports background progressive loading. Now a SWIF is basically a compiled Flash file. It's an open format, and it contains all of the images, audio clips, and the script, action script in this case, that makes a Flash file do what it does. Now, if you're not familiar with Flash or ActionScript, basically ActionScript is Flash's scripting language. If you are familiar with it, great. So we provide ActionScript 3 and ActionScript 2 virtual machines. Now again, ActionScript 3 is only in Scaleform 4, and so you guys don't have access to that yet, but very soon it will be coming to UDK. Now the virtual machines basically interpret the bytecode. So ActionScript is an interpreted language, so that's essentially what the virtual machines do is interpret that code, which does what it does. Now we provide OpenGL, Direct3D, GCM, and Wii API renderers. We've essentially got every platform covered, and we also provide executables for Win32, OS X, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. We also sell Scaleform Video separately. This is available. It's not in UDK, but for anyone that's making a serious game with UDK, there is a license available for that. And Scaleform Video, just real briefly, I'm going to talk about this. It just basically gives you access to high quality, high definition video, which is interactive thanks to ActionScript, so you can control it with play, rewind, fast forward. You can even rotate the video clip in 3D space. You can scale it. That's the great thing about using Scaleform Video with that interactivity layer. We use the CRI codec, and it supports multi-track 5.1 audio, as well as cues and subtitles. Also available is Scaleform IME. Just briefly, this is our input method editor. This is mostly for Asian developers who are doing MMOs and that sort of thing. Obviously, Asian language doesn't fit onto a standard US keyboard. So our IME system allows them to be able to do a chat window or whatever and have a system that Asian users can type onto. Our language bar basically replicates the Windows IME bar. Allows you to pick your language, say Korean, Japanese, or whatever the case may be. Scaleform ships with full audio support out of the box, and this is included into UDK. However, in general, you're going to typically use the UDK sound theme system to do all of your audio, but Scaleform does support embedded MP3s and WAV formats in the Flash file. Again, though, in UDK, you're going to want to use the sound theme system instead. This is the Scaleform Workflow, and I'm going to show you very briefly after this, this slide on basically how to take build a basic menu and bring it into UDK. So Scaleform was designed to be very artist-friendly, and basically you create your content in Photoshop or Illustrator, and in Adobe Flash as well. Now most of your content is going to be bitmap images when it comes to game development. So Flash doesn't really have bitmap editing tools that are that effective, so that's why Photoshop is required. But Flash allows you to bring it all together, add interactivity. You can do that in ActionScript, and then just import that into UDK, and you're pretty much good to go. However, our recommendation is to try to do most of your interactivity instead of ActionScript to do it in Unreal Script. Just eliminates one layer of abstraction and complexity that way, but it does tend to be faster as well. So, all right, so let me actually pull up a chair here and show you guys how you would go about bringing a menu into UDK to demonstrate the Scaleform workflow. Okay, so obviously, first of all, we're going to need to bring up Adobe Flash. I should have it installed on here. Bear with me a second. Now, before we can use Flash to create a menu for UDK, there's a few things that are very important in the setup phase. Now, if you're familiar with UDK and Scaleform, you may already know that it comes with a framework called Click, or the Component Lightweight Interface Kit. And what Click is basically a framework of UI widgets. So you've got buttons, checkboxes, sliders, scroll bars, text input fields, and so forth. Everything you would need, basically to create a menu. And so, you can develop your UDK menu without using Click. You can build everything the old school Flash way, manually. But the thing about Click is it allows for rapid prototyping and less, obviously less work on your end to create these things. But before we can use Click, we need to set it up. So the first step is when you're in Flash, we need to tell Flash where to look for Click when we're doing menu development. And the way this is done is you go into the Edit menu and select Preferences. And in the Preferences window, there's ActionScript here. When you select ActionScript, down at the bottom, you'll see ActionScript 2.0 settings. Now, you guys probably don't have Flash installed on your machines, but you'll just have to follow along with me here. So when you click on that, it'll bring up this window, ActionScript 2 settings. And so what we need to do is add a path here to the Click classes. So Click is basically ActionScript 2 framework. It's all written in ActionScript 2, and it was designed to be very lightweight, very fast, specifically for game development. So I'm going to add a class path with the plus button here, and I'm going to browse to Click, which is in the UDK install. So that would be under C, UDK, and then under Development, Flash, and then you'll see the Click directory there. So I'll hit OK. So the next thing I want to do is I need to bring it above the default Flash classes so that it takes precedence. So basically, you need to put that class path in between the dot operator and this local data classes line, and then hit OK. So now that we've done that, we're all set up to be able to use Click. If you didn't do that and you tried to use any of the click components and then compile a file, you would get all sorts of errors about missing classes. All right, so before we go any further, another thing that you'll want to set up in UDK, or I should say in Flash, is access to the standalone Scaleform player. Now, the standalone player is basically the Scaleform player that allows you to see your content outside of the game engine. And it looks essentially like it's going to look in UDK when you get it into place. So to set up the launcher in Flash, you need to go to Help and Manage Extensions. All right, so the Adobe Extension Manager should come up, and when you see that, you'll click Install. And then you need to browse once again to your UDK install. And this time we're going to go into Binaries, GFX, and typically in here you'll have a binary file for Scaleform. Unfortunately, in this case, it seems to be missing. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Scratch that. I'm thinking about something else. So Binaries, GFX, and then Click Tools. Now under Click Tools, you'll see Scaleform Click. This is the extension that we want to install. And accept. All right. So that means our launcher is installed now. That will allow us to launch our content straight from Flash into the standalone Scaleform player. I can close this window down now. Now that I've done that, though, I have to restart Flash. Kind of a pain. So we'll restart Flash. Now, Scaleform setup is pretty simple. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it. Setting up the launcher and setting up the click class paths. Obviously, if you have your own structure of components built in ActionScript, you would need to set up your own class paths. But there's really not much need to do that because Click provides everything that you could possibly need. And it's fully extendable. You can easily extend off of those classes to create your own versions. You could extend the button class to create my button class, and add whatever functionality you'd like to add. Okay, so we're back in Flash. Now we just need to actually add the Scaleform Launcher window to our workspace. So I'll go to the Window option up here and then Other Panels. And there should be Scaleform Launcher there now if it installed properly. And here we go. So this is our Scaleform Launcher panel. You can add it, you can dock it up here. So in order to be able to use it, we need to add the Scaleform player as a profile. So that's easy enough. Click the plus button. And we've got our player exe. We just need to click the plus button again. And we'll browse to the player that ships with UDK. So that would be in our UDK install under Binaries, GFX, and you'll see FX Media Player. So we'll just double click that. I'm going to leave the name as is. Okay, and now we give it a profile name, FX Media Player, and hit OK. So now we have access to the standalone Scaleform player from Flash. You can test your content straight from there. So if I were to open a sample file now that I've built ahead of time here, let's go to UDK, UDK Game, Flash, and I've got, let's see, a sample menu file here. I can now click this big button here, Test with FX Media Player. And essentially, ignore these errors because I didn't add another class path, but essentially here's the player now. This is our standalone GFX player with the menu, essentially how you would see it in UDK. All right, so let's build our own menu using Click and then import it into UDK and see how that works. So the first thing we'll need to do is create a new file. Choose ActionScript 2. Let's clear all this. All right, so now we need to, so let's say we want to add a couple of buttons in a text field. So to do this, you could, again, build everything the old school way with Flash assets, but instead I'm going to use the Click component framework. So to do that, I'll just need to open up some of those actual component samples, and that will be in the UDK directory under Development, Flash, Click. And so in this directory is everything related to Click. Components basically contains the actual graphical elements for each of the components. You can see here button, checkbox, drop-down menu, label, so forth. Then we have a demos folder, which contains several more advanced examples of using Click. We have things like dialog demo, inventory demo, and so forth. Under GFX, this is where the actual class action script is. So under controls, each of these is an action script file if I load one up. So this is button. We can see here that this is all of the action script that makes button work. So you can see it's a lot of code. So obviously you're not going to want to create your own stuff. It's a lot easier just to use Click. Makes development a lot faster. So let's, without further ado, let's just get on with it. Don't want to bore you too much. All right, so under Click components, I know I want to use a button, and I know I want to use a text area. So I'm just going to open button. And you can see here under button, we've got several buttons on the stage already. And now I'll open text area. Or actually, in this case, we'll use label. Label is basically a text field. All right, so now all I need to do with this label is, one way to use it would be to simply right-click it on the stage here of the label file, hit copy. I can go back to my menu file and then Control-V or paste. There it is. It's dropped right onto to my menu. Same thing with button. I just go to the button file, right-click, copy, back to my menu, and paste. So now I have one button in a text field. I can duplicate that button very simply, Control-C, Control-V. So now I have two buttons. Very easy to prototype a menu very quickly this way. All right, so before I go any further, I'm going to make some basic document changes. And I'm going to set the resolution of this menu. So first of all, I'll go to Modify Document. And I'll change my dimensions to 1280 by 720. And I'm going to change the background color to something darker. Now bear in mind, however, that when you change your background color, it really has no effect. It's simply for visual aid. I like to work with a dark background because it's more like what you're going to see in a video game, a dark background, whereas white is, just doesn't represent the final output very well. And it's a little bit harder to, really judge your colors on a white background. As an artist, one recommendation I can give to you is to always work on a dark background. It tends to make the colors look more accurate. Okay, so here's my menu file, 1280 by 720. Got a text field and two buttons. Now before we bring this into UDK, what we need to do is set up some instance names on each of these items. And these instance names we will use in Unreal Script to tell these widgets what to do or how to behave when they're clicked on and so forth. So first of all, I'm going to take my label, and when you click on the Properties tab in Flash, you'll see instance name here, and I'm going to name this My Text Field. And this name will be referenced in Unreal Script to be able to make changes to that text field. Now if you notice here on the Properties panel, there's a Component Parameters rollout. And this rollout allows you to do a few things, modify some of the behaviors or states of these widgets. And each widget is different. So for label, we have disabled, we have text, and we have visible. Obviously, setting this to disabled flag to true means that the text field will be grayed out. Then we've got text. This is basically where I can put the name, put whatever I want displayed in the label. So I could say, yo, UDK is cool, whatever. And invisible obviously controls the visibility of the label. Now under button, we can see we have a few other things. Of course, we have the label. And bear in mind that a button is composed of the graphical element as well as a label, which is where you see the word text field. So I can change the label of that button. I can, again, make it visible, invisible, and so forth. So again, my label, I've got my label set to my text field for the instance name. And I'm going to set this one to button 1. And this one to button 2. All right, and now I'm going to save it. Now, one important thing to remember when you're saving Flash files for UDK is it has to be in a certain directory structure. So in your UDK install, all Flash files should be saved under UDK game and then under Flash. Now from here, you'll want to create a folder. So in this case, I'll just call this Unreal University. And that will be the name of the package that this Flash file will be stored in UDK. So when you import it, it will pull that name for the package name. Now if I want to give it, put it inside of a group, I can also then create a folder inside of there for the group name. So I can just say my group, whatever. I don't have to do that. I can just put the file in here, but for this case I'm going to actually put it in a group. And then I'll name the file sfdemo. Well, let's call this Unreal University Demo. Okay, so now that I've saved it, I can publish it with my Scaleform launcher. Nothing special to look at there, obviously. Like I said, UI development is very sexy. But anyway, the point is showing you how to very quickly prototype a menu. Okay, so we're published. And when it was published, it should have created a Swift file in that same directory where I saved it. So if we go in there now, under UDK Game, Flash, Unreal University, my group, we can see here that we have our Swift file, Unreal University Demo. All right, so now we just need to import that into the UDK. I'm going to close this down here. Launch our editor. Now bear in mind, obviously when you're developing UI for games, there are primarily two things, well, I should say 3 things that you're going to develop UIs for. Menus, HUDs, and then any in-game content, what I would call diegetic UI, anything that the character can see. So maybe there's a computer terminal with UI controls on that terminal that the character could essentially walk up to and use. Like if you Deus Ex Human Revolution, there's obviously when you walk up to the code, a door, the key lock on all the doors, and you want to hack it or put the code in, that's all done with Scaleform. That's what I would call a diegetic user interface. Real technical term for you there. Basically means anything that the character could see if he were a person. So those are the 3 elements when developing UI for games. And in UDK, there are obviously 3 different paths to creating those 3 different types of UI. And I'm showing you right now how to do for menus. Next, we'll talk about HUDs. And then if I have time, I'll try to touch on how to do diegetics. So, okay, back to UDK. Let's see. See if I can find it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so let's see if I can do this. I'll turn around here so I can see what I'm doing. Find my mouse. There we go. Okay, so first things first, when you're creating a menu, the typical way for a UDK menu, Unreal Game menu, is to create a menu level. And this could be simply a square room that has no lighting that the player spawns into. Or if you really want to get artsy and do something cool, you could build, I've seen some stuff done where it's like inside of an office with computers and, you click on things and it, moves to different menu screens or, there's use your creativity, obviously. There's no limit to how you can make your menu screen look. But in the core of it, it's really just a room that the player spawns into and then Kismet is used to load the menu onto the screen as if it were a HUD overlay, essentially. So in order to do that, we need a test room. We need a simple room. And so I have here a simple room I created ahead of time. It's just nothing really special to look at. Obviously, it's just 4 walls of ceiling and floor and a player spawn point, right? Okay, so the next step, now that we've got our room, typically when you want to spawn the player into the menu, he shouldn't spawn with inventory and so forth. So you'll want to go to your player spawn point. Sorry about that. You'll want to go to View, World Properties. It's on the other side? Nice. Thank you. So under World Properties, let's see if I can remember where this is exactly. I believe it's under, I could be wrong, I believe it's under, yeah, World Info. So when you bring up your World Properties, under World Info, you should see that No Default Inventory. Just make sure that that is checked so your player doesn't spawn in with a gun and you can't be all shooting it. And so just one thing you should do. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, we need to bring in the actual menu that we created, our real spiffy looking menu. So, and that's done pretty much the way you would do any Unreal content. You open the content browser and you find the import button, click it. Boy, this is some really detailed technical stuff, isn't it? Okay, so, and then now of course we go into UDK Game, Flash. There's our Unreal University directory, my group. Double click that file, brings up the import window. Now old school UDK, you had to fill in all this package, group name and all that by yourself manually. But again, since we saved our file in that Flash directory with the package name and a group name, the folders, that's all filled out automatically for you. So kudos to that, very easy. Now there are some advanced options down here. You can pack your textures. Any textures that your Flash file uses, typically those are saved out separately as separate images, but you could pack them together on a single texture sheet. You can set your RGB on for color correction. You can rescale your texture and so forth. These aren't really important though for what we're trying to show today. This is really all I need. I hit OK. And there we go. I mean, it's that simple. Very painless. See if I can find, here we go. There's my package, Unreal University. Well, no, that's someone else's package. Uh-oh. See if I can find mine. Here we go, Unreal University. And there's my group. And of course, there's my Flash file. All right, so we've got our menu, so now we just need to save that package. And I will just save it here under content. Just going to save it right here. We'll call it Unreal University SF. Is that working? Good. Okay, so now that's it. I mean, that's how easy it is to import the Flash file into UDK. Now we just need to tell Kismet to load that up when the level starts. So we go into Kismet, and we should already have some stuff over here from this sample menu file that I've already created. So I'm going to start from scratch. We'll break this link. Okay, so the first thing to do is we need to basically have an event. And in this case, the event we want is level loaded. So we'll do a level loaded event. New event, level loaded. Okay, I'm going to just delete the old one just to be safe. Okay, so what do we want to do when the level is loaded? Well, we want to play our menu. Now this is where we've added in Kismet several GFX events and actions that can be used to do these things. So if we just right click and go to New Action, GFX UI, this is where you're going to find all of the important GFX related commands. What we want to do is we want to open the Flash file. So we'll choose open GFX movie. Imagine that. Okay, so now I just want to wire my level loaded invisible to on. All right, and now I just need to actually tell it what flash file to load. So I'll select that. Let me sit back down here so it's a little easier. You guys can see that okay. All right, so with the Open GFX Movie node selected, go down to GFX Action Open Movie. So we can see here we've got a lot of options. But really, the only thing we need to worry about for now is the movie field and the movie player class. Let's start with the movie field. This is where you will put the flash file that you want loaded. So I'm going to go back to the content browser and into my package, Unreal University. Oh, what happened here? Looks like my package is saying there's nothing in there. It's fully loaded. There we go. That's interesting. I didn't close UDK, did I? That's weird. Okay, whatever. Okay, so I'll select it. We've got the yellow highlight, it means it's selected. Back to Kismet. Click on the green arrow next to movie. Done. So we've basically now referenced the flash file in the movie field here. Now, movie player class basically allows us to define a class specific to this menu that has functionality. In this case, I'm going to leave it for the time being to the drop-down default, which is GFX Movie Player. That's the standard movie player class. That will work for us for the time being. Now, take focus is something we'll also want to turn on, especially for a menu. It should take focus from everything else. The player shouldn't be, moving around and doing stuff. It should be strictly, all input should be, all focus should be on the UI and capture input as well to make sure the player is not, able to do anything but use the menu. Also, we'll want display with HUD off set to true. Obviously, you don't want your HUD displayed while you're in the menu, typically. Render texture, that is not something we need, but we'll hopefully talk about that when I talk about diegetics. This is where render texture stuff comes in. All right, so that's all I really need other than adding a player owner. So I'm going to add a variable, new variable, player, and I will wire it to player owner. In this case, I'm just going to leave it all players. And that should be it. So let's see here. Go back into the level here. I'm going to save it. And then hopefully, when we run it, we should see. There we go. So nothing special to look at, obviously. It was just a quick prototype of how to put two buttons and a text field. But you can see, obviously, there's our two buttons and a text field. Now, if you notice, the screen is black. And this is because, by default, your Flash content will have a transparent background. So again, like I said, the color of your Swift movie has no impact on what it looks like in-game. It's completely transparent except for any widgets that are there or any bitmap images you put into it. So just bear that in mind. And the reason it's black is because my level has no lighting, as it should in this case. I just want a menu. Okay, so now that we've got our menu working, how do we add some functionality? That's where creating your own class comes in. So let's do that. And this is where we do things in Unreal Script to add the interactivity. So all I'm going to do for today, because obviously I don't have a lot of time, I can't go crazy and make all kinds of cool stuff happen, but I'm just basically going to set one of the buttons so that when you click on it, it will tell the text field to display something else. All right, so the way we do that is we need to create an Unreal Script class. So I'm going to go into Development, Source, and okay. So in here I've already created several classes for the demo menu that I've already created ahead of time, which I'll show you guys in a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste just for the sake of time. I don't want to have to write a bunch of code up here. It's not a lot of code, but I just want to make sure it works. So I've got this file here, SF menu. This is an Unreal script file. So I'm just looking at it in Notepad here. And we're going to duplicate some of this stuff. So I'm going to do a new text file. And I'm just going to show you the most important parts here. See if I can open this in a new window. Okay. So the first thing is we need to basically declare the class and tell it to extend GFX Movie Player. So we'll call this class Unreal University SF for Scaleform. And it needs to extend GFX Movie Player. And GFX Movie Player contains all of the core functionality to make a Scaleform movie work in UDK. Okay, so now that we've declared our class, the first thing we should probably do is create a start function. So with any Scaleform movie, the most important function that it has is the start function. This is the function that plays the movie, essentially, and tells it all of the initialization stuff that it needs. So we'll just create the new function, start, optional, I think it's player controller. Can't remember, but we'll double check. Optional, nope, that's not. Start paused, okay. Thinking of something else. So we'll put an optional parameter in here, optional argument. It's a Boolean. Start paused, and we'll say false. Basically, start pause can be used to obviously pause the menu when it first comes up, but we don't want that to be the case, so we'll just set it to false. Okay, but it does need to be in there. And the first thing we need to do in our function is call the super start function from GFX Movie Player. And then I believe advance comes next. Yep. All right, so my mind's a little fried today, guys, so bear with me. You know I should remember this stuff, right? Advance 0. So advance basically tells your Flash file to start playback. Advance is the command in GFX to say go. And we set it to 0. That's the rate. That's the starting point. Okay, and that's really all we need for the start function. Now this is good enough. I mean, this is pretty much all you need for your movie player. But obviously, there's nothing happening here other than starting it. So in order to have some interactivity, we're going to need to add a few other things. So first of all, we need to cache references to our buttons and our text field that we can then use to tell them to do things. So the first thing we need to do is create some new variables. And in this case, these are all click widgets. The label and 2 buttons, all click widgets. So we're going to declare some new click widget variables, and that's GFX click widget. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and declare button 1, button 2, and label 1. Okay, so now we've got our variables that we'll use to cache references to those actual Flash elements. So now in my start function, this is where I will actually cache the references. And this is done with, let's see, button 1 dot, wait a minute, sorry about that. Make sure I'm doing this right. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so actually what we need to do before we do that is we need to create our widget initialized function. So, okay, quick explanation. All GFX click widgets have the ability to send UDK a widget initialized event, which basically says, hey, I'm here, I've been loaded onto the screen, do what you need to do with me. So to do this, we have a function called widget initialized. If you can see it up there. It's event function widget initialized, and the parameters that it expects are the name of the widget's path, and the path being where it exists on the timeline in Flash, and then a GFX object itself. So whenever a click widget is initialized, this function will be fired off, and all of that data will be sent to it. And then what we need to do is we need to use a switch statement to find out which of the widgets was initialized. And then we can tell that widget, we can register it and tell it, how to react and so forth. So rather than write all this code down, I'm just going to copy and paste this into our sample file and make some modifications. So we'll scratch that. I was thinking non-GFX widget. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's our widget initialized function. So our switch statement basically says, all right, widget name. What's the name of the widget? That is the instance name in Flash of the widget. So then we need to have the actual cases that have those instance names. My indentation's all messed up here. Excuse me. All right, so the first one was, let's see, button 1, I believe. Let's just go back and make sure I got those named right. Button 1, lowercase, button 2, lowercase, and my text field. All right, so button 1, lowercase, there we go. And then we've got button 2. And our text field. Let's see, it was my text field, right? I have a short memory span. Okay, we'll delete these other guys. They're not necessary. All right, so within each of these case statements, we need to cache the reference to that widget, and then we can tell it how to react to button presses and so forth. So for button 1, as you can recall, we declared the variable button 1 above, GFX click widget button 1, and that will equal GFX click widget. Again, widget is the parameter up here that's actually storing the reference to the GFX object, okay? And now we can add an event listener, and in the case of a button, we'll want to listen for a click press. So button1.add event listener. So all of the click widgets use an event listener model, so they're always listening for input from the user. So if they click on it or they roll over the button or click and drag away and so forth, we have events for all of those things. And in this case, we're listening for click_press. That means the user pressed on the button. And when he does that, we want it to fire off a function. So this is our callback function that gets fired off when the user clicks on that button. In this case, we'll just say on button 1. Okay? Now, as an aside, if you would like to know what all of the various event types are for click widgets, this is easy enough. You just go into the development directory of UDK, Flash, click, GFX, and you'll see an events folder. Okay, so under events, there's a file here, event types. I'll just open this with Notepad. There we go. And so in here you can see all of the event types declared. So we've got click, double click, roll over, press, roll out, release outside, yada, 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 and on and on and on. And there's instructions on what these are for. Some are for buttons, some are for scroll bars, and so forth and so on. So that's an easy way to find out what your options are when you're trying to create event listeners for a particular UI widget. Okay, so button 1's all set up. We've got our break statement. Now, button 2, I'm just going to copy this for the sake of time, as I'm obviously running out of it. Okay? And we'll just call this, the function we want to call here is on button 2. And for my text field, we want label 1 equals GFX click widget. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set the text for label 1 using a function. And this function is basically thanks to our direct access API in Scaleform, which means that you can call Flash-related commands straight from Unreal Script. And So we're going to say label1 dot set string, and we give it the name of, well, let's just use set text. Set text, this is a quicker one. So we'll do set text and then whatever we want it to say, I love UDK. Okay? All right, so now that we've done that, there's one last thing we need to do, and that is to actually bind the widgets. And one way to do this is in the default properties of the Scaleform movie player file. So I'll create a default properties section. And again, rather than type all this out, I'm going to just copy and paste for the interest of time from this file. All right, so when you're binding a click widget, in your default properties, you use widget bindings.add. The widget's name, and that's, again, the instance name of the widget in Flash. So we'll start with button 1. Widget class, and in this case, equals class GFX click widget. All right, and then we'll do the same thing for the other two. Button 2, and my text field. Okay, so that's basically all we need to do for our click widgets to be registered and bound so that we can access them. Now I just need to add the on button 1 and on button 2 functions so that when the player clicks on button 1 and button 2, the functions are there, they do something. So we'll just say function on button 1. And in this case, we need to define it as a GFX click widget event. I remember that. Yeah, GFX click widget event data. That's what I thought. All right, so GFX click widget dot event data, and we'll just call that EV. And in this case, when the player clicks on button 1, we want the label to change. So we'll just again say label1 dot set text. I really love UDK. Okay, so now I just need to duplicate this function and rename it to on button 2. And in this case, we'll do the same thing. We'll change the text field, but we'll change it to I also love Scaleform some. All right. Save that, and that's it. That's our basic GFX file for displaying the menu. So we just need to save that in development, source, and I've got a directory here called SF Tutorial where I have my own game type. I'm going to save it in here as Unreal University menu. Let's see if I can save it as a UC file. I'll probably have to change that. Let's go find out. UDK. Nope, I think that's a UC file. Yep, okay. All right. So now that that's done, let's close this down. You know what? Actually, it looks like my my class paths weren't correct. Let me go back and set that up again. We're going to need to close UDK. And recompile. Uh-oh, looks like I have an issue here. Script versus class name mismatch. Oh, my bad. Okay. What did I name it? Unreal University menu. Okay. Unreal University menu. Rookie mistake. Let's see if I can change the capitalization there. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. Back to my Flash file here. Looks like I had some issues with my class paths, so let's make sure I set them up right. Huh, that's interesting. Got to reset them up. Somehow they didn't save, they didn't take. So no problem. If that ever happens to you, you compile and your classes give an error saying that they don't exist. Well, obviously it didn't take for some reason, so you just need to reset up your class paths. So once again, that's under Development, Flash, Click. Move that up. Okay. Hit OK. All right, let's try to compile it again. All right. No compile errors that time. And now I'm just going to make sure that you notice there were some squares on the text fields and so forth. That's because my fonts aren't embedded. So I'm just going to make sure that that is all the fonts are embedded. And the way we do this is to select a text field, and under the Properties window, click Embed. And just under here, we can see Basic Latin. That's pretty much all you're ever going to need. It's basic uppercase, lowercase, and punctuation. Hit OK. And there we go. So we've got our text fields with the proper fonts. Okay. Let's see. Did we compile OK this time? Oh no, I'm missing a semicolon. Go figure. On line 3. See, this is the problem with writing code in a live demo. There we go. All right, let's try again. Looks like I'm going to have to wrap it up here pretty soon. It's almost 5 o'clock. Man, time flies. Wish I could show you guys more. Am I still missing a semicolon?
Class definition.
Sorry?
It's class definition.
Class definition. There we go. Bingo. Thank you. It's hard to see. I have tunnel vision right now. Okay, now we still have some issues. Function start differs from original. You're right. You're absolutely right. Come on, baby. One more time. We can do it. Don't make a fool out of me. Uh-oh. Yay! Okay. All right, so now we just need to go back into the editor. I'm going to re-import that package, that Flash file. And this will give you a chance to see how easy it is to re-import a change that was made. And the changes I had to make were, obviously, I had to embed my fonts and make sure my class paths were correctly imported because they weren't. All right, back to UDK. We find our package, Unreal University. Let's fully load it. It's already fully loaded. All you do is right-click on the Flash file, re-import. Okay, we're re-imported. We hit Save. Now I need to go into Kismet and tell it to use our newly created class. There we go. Back to the other side here. Open GFX Movie. Now, if everything worked out okay, and I'm worth the money that I get paid, we should see our class in the drop-down. Unreal University menu. Is that what it says over there? I can't see it.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, we're almost there. So let's just save our level and test it out. Hopefully you guys can see it, what it does. Okay, so do we see it? Just barely. It's very hard to read from here, obviously. Maybe I could have made the text field bigger. But basically that text field says, I love UDK. Let me find my mouse. Where's my mouse? See if I can get focus here. Okay, so I've made one little mistake. There we go. Don't have a mouse cursor. But now you can see I'm hovering over button 1. It's kind of turning blue there. If I click it, bam, I really love UDK. You probably can't see that very well. It's a very tiny text field, and you're way back there, but there it is. And if I click on button 2, I also love Scaleform Sum. So there you go. Very easy to rapidly prototype a menu, add some basic functionality in your own custom menu class, and that's all there is to it. I know it wasn't real exciting to see this. It's very basic stuff. If I had more time, I'd show you a lot more really interesting things. I have some cool demo files. I can always show you guys if you want to stop by the Autodesk booth over here. I'm there for the rest of the day and tomorrow. I have a bunch of these sample files that I can talk to you about. Otherwise, thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun, and hope you guys have a good rest of your show.